Right, part B, so I've got to identify what type of question this is first. So looking at the couple of things that stand out to me, it says use apparatus to determine. So I'm seeing that word determine in there. If I ever see the word about determine or investigate or experiment or something like that, I know it's always the same thing, an experiment question, investigation question. So I'm always just going to try to use the same structure. So the first thing I'm going to try to do is, if there's a formula for that investigation, I'm just going to write it down first. After I've done that, it's the equipment that I'm going to use and say what I'm going to use to measure it for. The method or some kind of detail that I need to say. And then if I can say plot a graph, I'm going to say plot a graph or repeat and take an average. And then plot a graph, if I can say plot a graph for this experiment. So the first thing that I'm going to be looking at is a formula. Now for this experiment, is there a formula for this one? Well, this is one where there actually isn't one. So I can't go through the formula to get the equipment from there. I've just got to try to use my brain and get the equipment from there. Now in this one, it's actually saying other apparatus as well. So this is suggesting it's not just the measuring equipment, it's also just any other thing that I'm going to be using for this experiment. Now it says here, you should add to the diagram to help with your answer. Sometimes it might say you may add to the diagram. Either way, what this is telling you is there's marks for adding to the diagram. So obviously I've got to make sure that I'm adding to the diagram here. And I've just got to try to remember, how did I do this in class, or how did I, when I looked at the videos for revision and stuff like that, what was going on. And it's telling me there, another key thing that stands out to me is critical angle. So I know that somewhere in this answer, I've got to make sure that I know, I'm showing the examiner that I understand what is meant by critical angle. So it's up to you the order that you do it in, but whatever you think is going to be sensible, you're just going to be doing that straight away. So the first thing that I'm going to be saying here is, I might as well, because I've seen the word critical angle, I'm just going to show the examiner that I know what is meant by critical angle. So this is just something that I should be revising. I should have known this anyway. As soon as I see critical angle, it keeps on changing my writing to things that are even worse than what I was writing in the first place. Critical angle is the angle of incidence when angle of refraction equals 90 degrees. Now obviously you're going to write the full words in the exam, I'm just doing it quickly here. So now I've probably got a mark for that, but if I haven't, I've given myself a clue that I'm going to apply later. What equipment am I going to be using? Well, I know that I'm going to need a ray box. I'm going to have to shine the ray of box, the light from the ray box through the glass towards some kind of boundary over there. So the way that you should do it is, you've got a point there that you're aiming for, and you always shine the ray of light through the semicircular edge. So that's something that's very important. The reason why you shine it through there is so that it doesn't refract on the way in, and I've got to aim for the middle again, so I've got to make sure that this isn't refracting on the way in. So I've got my ray box over here. I have to shine the ray of light towards the middle of the semicircular glass block, and like I said, it's so it doesn't refract on the way in. And I can say that I should be saying it here as well. So shine a light from a ray box towards the center. But because it's marked on a diagram, I know that that's fine as well. I'm probably going to get the mark for doing that. And then I'm just going to keep on changing angle. So change the angle of the ray until, or change angle of incidence, I should say, the angle of incidence of the ray, until the angle of refraction is 90 degrees. So I've just used this knowledge that I said over here. Then measure angle of incidence, and I've got to say the equipment I'm going to be using, because remember this thing over here, I'm going to be using a protractor. So I've done the equipment now, I've said something sensible for the method. I'm always just going to say repeat and take an average. And is this one that I can plot a graph for? Not really, because I'm just looking for one particular thing over here. And now I'm happy, yeah, this is going to be my full marks for this question. So we've got a 6-mark question now. So what do I need to do for 6-mark questions? Hopefully you're getting into the good habit of remembering what I've got to do. I've got to first split it up into however many parts there are, so at least 2 parts, but it could be 3, 4, 5, whatever. And then for each part, I've got to make sure that I'm being clear in each one about what's the law principle formula for this one. So what's the key thing the examiner wants me to say for this one? What's the obvious things I can say for this? What are the keywords for it? What's the link to the question? So there's all of that standard stuff that we've been saying for 6-mark questions. So how many parts am I going to break this up to? Well, firstly, it tells me about radio and it tells me about gamma. So it's very clearly EM wave spectrum question. So, and there's definitely going to be at least 2 parts. What does the next part say? It says compare how they're produced. So if it's saying compare how they're both produced, well, this is only 2 parts of the question now, because I'm going to have to obviously talk about how radio waves produced, how a gamma radiation produced. In the real exam, it might say something like how they're produced and used, in which case that would be 4 parts then, because then I'm saying how a radio wave is produced, how a radio wave is used, how a gamma wave is produced, how a gamma wave is used. But I know, before even starting this question, I know there's 2 parts to this, so I'm just going to say all the stuff about radio waves first. Now, obviously, I'm going to abbreviate when I'm writing. You've got to write out in full in the exam. So let's just talk about how radio waves are produced first. And now this is just content recall. I've just got to make sure that I've done my revision properly. So the first thing that I know how radio waves are produced is they're produced by oscillations of electrons in circuits or something like that. So produced by oscillations of electrons. Whoops. Okay, and then I've said in circuits or in areals, so I can carry on saying that. In circuits or in areals. Okay, so that's pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with that. Is there anything else that I know about how radio waves are produced? I mean, I could say, well, if they're oscillating, what type of current is going to be? So it's got to be by AC, because yeah, oscillation is when it's going to be changing directions. I might as well put that in there as well. Now, is there anything else I know about radio waves? Well, I know they're used for communication, but this question is asking me how they're produced. So if I wanted to play it safe as well, I might as well, I'm not going to lose marks saying, oh, and they are used for communication. But sitting here, I'm thinking I'm probably not going to get marks for that. But is there a way that I know that the fact that they're used for communication, what can I link that to how they're produced? Well, if I'm trying to communicate with them, obviously I'm producing them on purpose because I'm producing them in order to communicate. So I'm not going to say they're used for communication, but I'm going to say they're produced on purpose or produced intentionally. And then I could add on there, or because they need to be used for communication, might as well play it safe. I'm not going to write down that. Like I said, I'll do it quickly. But now I think I've said enough things about radio waves to get me like a few marks for that. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get into the top band unless I do exactly what it says. I need to also be talking about gamma radiation. So what do I know about how gamma is produced? Well, there's a few different ways a few different things I can say for that. One way that gamma waves are produced is by annihilation. So again, I just need to make sure that I've done my content revision. So annihilation is when a positron meets an electron, or a particle meets an antiparticle, it's antiparticle, and they're going to annihilate to release pure energy. That keeps on changing. That's meant to be gamma. Okay, so if I'm saying it's releasing pure energy, well, I might as well just say that. It's just energy. And again, it's not really how it's produced, but I'm not going to lose anything by saying it. Is there any other way that I can say that they're going to be produced? Well, I know that gamma comes from nuclei as well sometimes when there's nuclear rearrangement. And again, this is because the nucleus wants to lose energy to become more stable. And this is kind of how it's produced, so that's okay. Okay, now I've said quite a few things here for radio waves. I've said quite a few things for gamma. Is there anything else I can say for gamma? Well, I also know that it's released during fission and fusion. And again, I've remembered that from my content revision. So released during fission and fusion. And again, this is energy. So I'm just making sure that I'm putting that in there as well. If you're doing combined, you don't need to know too much about fusion, but everyone should know about fission anyway. So either way, this could come from a combined or a triple paper. I'm pretty happy now that I've got 6 marks for it because it was only in 2 sections. I've given all the information that I've got, or enough information about both of those sections. And as long as I'm making it clear, so I'm not getting words wrong or anything like that, I've got the